everyone. Welcome to Psychology and Spirituality, a bridge to a better life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me are Dr. Anahy Fonseca, Jussara Korngold, and Anne Sinclair. They join me in a very special episode. We're here in Assisi, Italy, to celebrate the power of fraternal love. If this is the first time you're watching this podcast like program, please note that our program, The Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis and offer the safe space to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens, bringing insights, actionable tips, and real world advice to help you and I lead a better life. Today's program is sponsored by AME Brazil, TV Mansão do Caminho, the International Spiritist Council, and the United States Spiritist Federation. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't done so. And if you'd like to check out other information about this program and other additional information about Spiritism, please check us out at spiritist.us. If you have any comments, questions, feedback to today's episode, please write them down and we will respond to those at a later episode. During today's discussion, we will be focusing on fraternal love. We will talk about numinous experiences, chaos theory, and the overall symbolism found in the archetypal level of our being. Yes, let me just break down a little bit because it is based on Lionel Corbett's book, Psyche and the Sacred Spirituality Beyond Religion, that we find the same. Lionel Corbett, says the archetypal level of our being is a dimension of our spiritual source. And so it is outside of time and space in the ordinary sense of the words. It is therefore not a part of the developmental model of human growth, yet paradoxically participates within it. A lot to talk about, to think about, but let's hear from Dr. Anahy Fonseca and Sinclair and Jussara Korngold how chaos theory, butterfly effect, and other symbolisms can enhance our understanding and our notion of what fraternal love is. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And actually, more than a pleasure, it's overwhelming, I would say, because we are in Assisi among friends and feeling all this loving atmosphere that surrounds us. And actually, we cannot discern if it's within or outside us of ourselves. So I would like to start asking both of my friends, Jussara and Anne, about how do they feel in this psychosphere, this all this vibration in the air, what this vibration do to them.
As you all know, we have been together for quite some time, in this project, in this podcast about psychology and spirituality based on the works of Joanna de Angelis. And we had the opportunity of organizing a personal meeting, since we are talking that Anne lives in the UK, Marcia and myself, we live in the US, and Dr. Anahy lives in Brazil, so that we could meet here as a way of connecting even more with the purpose of our work, and of course connect with Francis of Assisi and Claire, that we know as well as being Joanna de Angelis. We thought about doing this special edition, although we will not be able to show you the landscape, but we hope to bring to all of you the emotion that we all are feeling, not only to be here amongst friends, among people that like yourselves want to better yourselves and to really connect with the way of living of Francesco, Francis of Assisi, and Chiara and Joanna de Angelis, and so we hope you enjoy it, and through everything that we are going to be presenting today and talking today, you can also feel all this energy that we are receiving here in Assisi, Italy.
And I would just like to share as well my joy at the opportunity of being here together with all of you. But I would just like to give you my own experience. When I arrived a couple of days ago, I came on the train, and I don't know if any of you have been here to Assisi, but the train station is down at the bottom of the hill, and the old town, is way up the top of the hill. So either you take a taxi or you take a bus, or you're very young and you can hike it up. So I decided to take the bus, and I was just thinking about my suitcase and the change for the bus and all these kind of things. And we went along for about a block, the bus was going, and suddenly it hit me, this change in the energy. And I almost burst into tears. And I said, oh my gosh, something's different here. And so it was a visceral experience for me. And it wasn't like I was looking for it. It just happened. And I said, I had to stop. I said, whoa, the energy is different here. And I was in the bus, but all the chit and chatting going on, it all evaporated. And it was like I could connect to something else. I could hear almost the voice, if you like, in my head of Francis and his connection to simple things in life, like nature. Suddenly I could see the birds flying outside. I could see the flowers, and I just felt so connected, and I just felt full of joy. And I think that's one of the things that we associate with Francis, finding joy. And in our lives, in our daily lives, sometimes that is lacking for many reasons, sometimes good reasons, but trying to reconnect with that sense of hope, of joy, of even fraternal love. So this was my experience, and I hope you may be able one day to come as well and see what you feel.
Wow, that's amazing. And to people that are watching us at this point, some of us hadn't met yet personally. So all this loving atmosphere and this fraternal love, as Marcia was saying previously, it surrounds us. And even if we are not close together, but even if we are, and people can be seeing this, can be watching this in another time, in another period, and far away, but we are all connected to each other, in a sense that when we get in this vibration, when we get in this space within ourselves, where we really connect to this love that was the example that Joanna and Francis of Assisi gave through their life in taking care of, people sick, the poor, and being very, very loving to each other, to nature. So when we connect to this dimension, it's not outside of ourselves. I think your example, both of you gave, it's within ourselves. And it's there, people. It's not, something that we have to struggle so much to find. We just have to clean a little bit. We have a window here in our back, and all this light coming in, and we know, and you later on, maybe Marcia can put a photograph for you all, but we know that the light is coming through. So the symbolism of the window, when the window opens to the outside, is an expansion of consciousness, but it's not the intellectual part of our consciousness. Is this the heart, that the consciousness and the realization, that an openness that the heart gives to us. So I was listening to you both, and I was imagining Saint Francis as a young son of a rich family, and with all these ideas of being a knight. It was, really an achievement at that point. And his father wanted him very much to be a knight. And so he goes to the Crusades, for instance. And a lot of things happen. I do hope everybody reads St. Francis' history. It's really beautiful. But what I was thinking is that how we would feel if we can just approach his story, what he tells us about people that wrote about him, and how he would feel feeling all this light coming from deep within him, as Anne said, getting out of the bus. As you said also, Jussara, feeling the atmosphere here. If we get almost, we almost burst into tears, right? We feel really strong, and our blood pressure goes like this. So can you imagine St. Francis as a young person, a young boy, and feeling all this calling inside, how he would have felt that? What do you imagine? What your ideas that you could share with people?
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting because we have like sometimes this conflict between what's coming in from inside our these ideals and this force that's wanted to burst forth, and on the outside us wanting to sort of meet our family's plan for us, what society expects, and us really wanting to fit in as well, isn't it? Be part and be successful and do what is expected of us, and yet inside there is this fire that's consuming us, and it can create some conflict, I think. And who wins? Who wins? It's and I think then as we get older, sometimes we let that fire die away because the outside world has dominated our lives, and we've become completely focused on the outside world, and we have stopped listening to that inner voice and stopped feeling that inner fire. And I think it's really interesting to reconnect. So I think Francis obviously at some point must have allowed that inner light, that inner fire. Well, I'm calling it fire, but it's a good fire, just to burst forth and to somehow let itself manifest.
I was thinking about two things. One thing is about the knighthood, which was especially for his father, an expectation because they were very rich, but they didn't have titles. So a knighthood in the family would bring a different kind of prestige. And then again, how we imagine to go up in the ladder of social life, social economical life, and not thinking that, thinking about going up in terms of the spiritual ladder is so much more important. And so they couldn't properly value what was happening. But also a point that is important for us to think about, because it's easy, or many times when we are reading the stories of the life of those great characters like Francis of Assisi, we think that it happened overnight. He just woke up one day and said, no, now, the calling, or we hear about the voices, or build my church. But the thing is, even when he went to war, when he went with the Crusades, when he went with a war to the Perugia, he was kept a prisoner for a year in very difficult conditions. He got back ill. So we can imagine that during this whole process of being captive, and he had a lot of time to to think about life, to meditate. So all of that, I think it was like preparing the terrain for the seeds at the right
Mm.
time, to come in and manifest. So let us not think, because this can lead us, when we are trying to do the same thing, to frustration, because we think, oh, if I cannot wake up tomorrow as a missionary, it's never going to happen. If you think like this, it's never it's never going to happen. So we have to understand that there is a whole process.
Yes, there is a whole process. And the thing that I wanted to to remind everybody, is that the ego has to be strong. We were talking about this previously, and mature enough to surrender to these forces in a way that is not outside of the world. Because we need to relate to each other. We need to relate to the world that we are living in. But we also, this is a paradox, because we also need to contact, as I was telling, with this inner fire, with our calling. So to balance this force, so we need the ego to be strong enough and to be mature. And I was just when listening to you, just remembering that moment when Saint Francis takes off his clothes, when he says to his father that, okay, so I'm giving you back everything that you gave me. Of course, he could not give back the life that the father gave, but in a sense, in a material sense, right? And so we have the clothes, for instance, in our dreams, as a symbolism of the persona, the part of the ego. Then the ego accepts, it's conscious, the qualities, the characteristics, and that helps us to adapt in the world. So in a moment that we are taking off, let's say it was a dream that we were analyzing, if we are taking off our clothes, it means that we are, kind of saying to our persona, as you were saying, Sarah, okay, this is part of me, or was part of me in the case of St. Francis, but it doesn't belong to me anymore. So I can just imagine that he had to be really strong to, surrender to this inner calling. And I wanted to read to you a small sentence. It's deep, but it's small, by Lionel Corbett. He is a Jungian analyst that writes a lot about the religious function of the psyche, and about this deep, we call the transpersonal dimension of the psyche, which means our deep, deep unconscious. That it's there that we are all one, in a sense of what we call the collective unconscious. And with these old types, old forms that we call the archetypes, that are ancient forms that it's our heritage, human heritage. All of us have and live actually with, like we would say, like a spiritual DNA, let's say, okay? So we all have these ancient forms that can manifest in our lives. And Lionel Corbett says the archetypal level of our being is a dimension of our spiritual source, and so is outside of time and space in the ordinary sense of these words. It is therefore not a part of the developmental model of human growth, yet paradoxically participates within it, which means when we are talking about our spiritual source, okay, that it's going to manifest in life. And the spiritist knowledge, right, talks a lot about this, that we, before incarnating, we plan our incarnation, the major parts and major challenges that we're going to face with our guides, spiritual guides. So at this point, like Saint Francis already knew, if we could say, deep within himself, that he had a path, he had a mission. And we know that he was less, like we could say in a common sense, best friends with Jesus, right? So he came in a dark, it was middle age, in a dark moment of our history, to remind everyone what love was all about, the love that Jesus Christ was talking about. And this love that deep within our psyche is not outside, tell us that we are all one. And we are not disconnected to each other, from each other. That we are, the fraternal love makes all of the sense in psychological sense, because it's there in this deep dimension of the psyche that we are one. We have the same common heritage. The only difference is what it's going to be active in our lives. Okay, so is that complicated?
A little bit. Maybe I'm of all of you the one with less sort of psychological studies. Actually, none at all. Just learning as I'm going along. But I did think this idea, I've heard it before from other cultures as well, about this feeling of being connected to everything. That when people have like this kind of experience, which is like almost like a numinous experience of it, and there's this say, I felt connected and that everything was one. So I've never had that experience in this life, at least I have memory. And I find it quite difficult to imagine how that would be, because all my life I'm making yourself different from everything, to make myself my self-identity, that I am different from you, that I'm different from you. And I'm building this all my life. So then I wonder how it is to suddenly feel all like one. I don't know how. I haven't experienced it, and maybe it's something to experience rather than to intellectualize about.
So everybody talks about the numinous, that it means the sacred.
Yeah.
And we say that a numinous experience to the ego feels, we use the terms by Rudolf Otto. And the ego feels like it's a mysterium tremendus et fascinans. It's in Latin. So it's mysterious, tremendous, and fascinating. Okay. So you have had a numinous experience. For instance, we are talking to people now when you got out of the bus. Okay. So in this sense, the ego, when you start, you felt all the emotion, because the ego feels like overwhelmed with emotion. Suddenly you feel speechless. You said yourself that everything disappeared. This is a numinous experience. I present to you alive.
Oh my God, that is so interesting. It's sometimes we just don't have the vocabulary, don't realize that's what. Okay, it's so interesting.
Yeah. So
thank you.
It's not me, it's Joanna and Saint Francis. That, of course, it's the psychosphere that we were talking about. We are not, it's not plain, but I just realized, and it's the first time that you are telling me when you arrived that you felt that. So that's a numinous experience. So when we have a dream, for instance, that connects us to something, that the ego not only cannot explain, but the emotion is really strong, and gives the ego this feeling of being overwhelmed by something greater. So that's a point when the ego is really feeling surrendering to what we call the self, or the higher consciousness. That it's, Joanna tells us, that is our spirit. So what do you think about that?
I really went to, to a totally different place. Because when she was talking about it in this, kind of experience, and I couldn't, quite well or consciously feel that, I was thinking about that story about when the butterfly flips its wing on the other, part of the world, the whole energy, the winds, everything is going to receive an impact on that in relation, because of that. And then it came to my mind as well that um, statement by Jesus when he says, "Look at the lily of the valley. Not even Solomon in all its glory dressed like one of them. Imagine what God would be for you, doing for you." Something like this. So I was thinking, okay, the butterfly flips its wings, and then it changed the winds and everything. If we are talking in this level of material things and physical place, can you imagine the network that exists among us in terms of energy? Sometimes I say, we may find ourselves at home and all of a sudden you feel like a surge of sadness or anguish. It may be because in some part of the world something is happening that that wave of emotion comes to us, and for a moment we attune with that, and then you say, why am I feeling like this? And so it's this.
I had a numinous experience now. Because you see, that's amazing. We can feel, that's the atmosphere of the city. People come, please, at some point, because listening to Jussara now, see how it's connecting. Um, I have heard this many times as a chaos theory, this of the butterfly. But as a Jungian analyst, actually, it's the first time, and I think, of course, it's because of this, that I connected with the symbolism also, because I was all quantum physics and right, and the chaos theory. But then, if you connect to the symbolism, the butterfly is a classical symbol of the psyche. The psyche is our soul, okay? And the wind, when right flips, yeah, the wind that can reach China or whatever part of the distant part of the world for us, the wind is a classical symbol of the spirit. Okay, so I had an insight, a spiritual insight, that the struggle that our psyche, our soul here incarnated on earth in the material world has to do to develop and to realize the archetypal level, to incarnate, as Lionel Corbett says, the archetypal level of the psyche. Incarnating here in the material world and doing the job it is supposed to do to expand consciousness, right? And this expansion will be in our spirit, because we know that everything that we are living is not wasted, right? It's going to be in our spiritual memory, and it's going to help us through this ascension path, like in the bus in the bottom of the hill, and struggling carrying our luggage. I'm very symbolic now. Up the hill uh, to reach and to connect with all this loving energy that St. Francis and St. Clair left to us here alive, So I think I had a numinous experience.
Great.
And
Two already we had
yeah,
live.
and this connection that we are feeling here, and we haven't planned. We were just talking before, but I'm quite sure that's an example that they all want to give us, and that we can share with everybody that are listening to us. That this fraternal love is when our ego stop thinking so much about the camera and about what we are going to say, is that correct or not, and then we can connect to our hearts, to what comes to your mind, what comes to your mind, what comes to mine, and then we get these insights together. Isn't that beautiful?
And I was thinking what you were saying, if at our level we can already experience such emotions and connection. When we think about Francis of Assisi and Claire, Joanna, I think it's even hard for us to try to imagine what they feel and what level they go in terms of receiving the inspiration, the guidance, and but at the same time, the more we grow in this sense, living, like you say, living the persona, going into the self, the realization, the more we feel peace as well, and are more tolerant, compassionate in relation with others. That's why sometimes for us it's so hard to understand how come those uh, special beings could cope with us, right? And say, oh my God, I can barely cope with someone that is basically the same level or even better than I am. Imagine them being at this level of spiritual involvement and having to relate with us. So it's when we feel the love, when we feel the understanding, when we feel that they know the process, and I think it's beautiful because it shows us that the way is exactly this one is the way of um, getting together, of doing together, of growing together, helping each other, in the weaknesses that we have, and what we can exchange in this sense.
I just sorry, I want to say something as you were speaking. Something popped into my head very unexpectedly, and maybe Anahy can help us because when you were saying, I wonder how it is to be like Francis or higher spirit, how they feel. And what came to my mind was like lots of our difficulties with one another is because we see in the other the reflection of our shadows. But they, if their shadows are reduced or they have no shadows, they only see the light in each other. So they don't get irritated with the others like we do. Maybe something like that occurred to me.
Yeah, we would say the integration of the shadow,
Mm.
right? Because everybody and everything evolves. So even our people that we regard as saints, like Saint Francis, Saint Clare, they have evolved. They are evolving. It's endless, right? The evolution of the spirit. And so at some point they felt the same thing. We should think, right? Because from the atom to the archangel, right? So I like to think like of them, about them, like older brothers and sisters that have already followed the path, so they know deep inside, of course, this knowledge, that what goes through our hearts. So I think at this point that when we are thinking this way, that we shouldn't worry to think, oh, he's so out of reach, or she's so out of reach. How many incarnations I would have, I would need to get.
Yeah.
Because in this archetypal level of the psyche, you remember what I read? There's no space and time. So the archangel that we are going to be at some point in our evolution in this non-dual approach is already there in the atom, and vice versa. The atom that the archangel was one day will be always with him or she, whatever it's right. So that's something quite different for us to understand. But it's something very important to understand in this development, when we still need an ego, and we in the incarnation, okay, we will have the ego and the self. Like we need this conversation, develop this talk between the ego and the self, and our higher consciousness. But at the same point, we already in this out of space and time reality that is happening now. It's not something in the future. We are really one, and the archangel that we are going to be one day, it's already present in us in potential, right? I don't know if I kind of got a little lost because it comes to my mind all these images, but I think it's very important to get to this perception of ourselves, that we don't have to worry so much with what we call the shadows. Okay, have I answered you?
Yeah, I think
Kind of.
yes, and I think for me it's quite it's difficult to hold the idea intellectually, but I can almost feel it in the heart. So it's like I'm not sure that I can really understand like how can things be existing at the same time, but that's just because of how I am, where I am at the moment. But I in my heart I know that that is potentially how it is. It's quite interesting because it seems like a conflict almost.
Yeah, and it is, and Jung says that it causes a paradox. He talks about the cross as a symbol of a sacrifice, in the sense that there is strong forces, okay, pulling you to different sizes in the cross. So this paradox, we have to, just be able to live with it. But I think it's very, very important that we realize that deep within what we call the transpersonal dimension of the psyche, we are one, because we are emanations, if we could say, of the same source, the same light that we call God or ultimate reality. Doesn't matter how you call it. But we all come from this source, and we are going back to this source with all our experiences, through different life cycles. So I think it's just a concept to have in mind when things get really tough, and they can get in our lives, to have like like the butterfly that struggles so much to get out of the cocoon, right? But then when finally it gets out of the cocoon, it's so beautiful, and it flies so lightly. But also it lives very shortly, lives the material life one day. So all that struggle and that beautiful flight and that beautiful wings, where do they go? What was the purpose of the butterfly? But if everything, like St. Francis and Sinclair taught us, are interconnected, and there's nothing wasted, because all of that beauty, all of that joy that we were talking previously, is in our heritage, common heritage, in the archetypal level, and it's for us. We are children of this beautiful light and heritage.
And one thing that is beautiful, and when we are talking about it and thinking and meditating about their lives, is that, the sign to know that a spirit has already achieved this numinous stage, or this transcendental stage, is that they never reproach. They teach. They teach by examples. They teach by words. They try to guide us, but there is no reprimand. And I think this is the main characteristic that we see in terms of those spirits. And when we study the life of both Francis of Assisi and Claire, is that is the embrace, is the acceptance, but at the same time, showing us the path where we should be tracking in all this you know, uh, this experience that we are living now. I think it teaches us so much in relation to how to connect to others as well, and how should we by their examples, and of course the example of Christ himself that did the same, never condemning, even at the cross, uh, forgiving the one that said, I repent because I'm here. I deserve to be here. You don't. And so I think that we should take this. We should take this sentiment with us, and this is definitely going to help us in our relationships, in our personal growth as well.
So I think we are coming to the end of this amazing, for me at least. I hope for everyone that it's at home watching us. And I would finish, my part here in our fraternal meeting with this idea that the sacred, it's at our disposal. Let's say it's a part that it's the source, that it's not outside. It's the finding this path, as Jussara was saying. It's the way that these great and beautiful souls like Saint Francis and Saint Clare shows us, and of course, like Jesus came to show us the path. To find this source of light, of joy, of peace and love, of everything that is good, and it's there for us to use in our experience. So it is sometimes hard because we have to, the path, it's not outward, it inwards, right? So, and we are going to find some characters there that are not very friendly, like our shadows, some complexes. But if we can act with us with the same love that these beautiful souls like Saint Francis and Saint Clare have towards ourselves, if we can act towards ourselves with the same love that they have towards us and towards all humanity and towards everything, animals, nature, minerals, everything, our beautiful, beautiful planet. So I'm quite sure that we are going to be less afraid of ourselves, and we will project less onto others. So the shadows, like Anne was talking before, that we project things that we are afraid from ourselves, we project onto others, and then we get all this confusion in our relationships. So if we can trust this path that they are showing us, okay, trust the butterfly, trust the wind, trust nature, trust love, we are going to be safe, and we are going to do all this path towards our own evolution in a more joyful, in a more peaceful way, in a more loving way. I don't know if Annie would like to.
No, I just think you just put it all, summarized it so beautifully. I want to leave it as you've said it. And I think that everybody can listen to that and just find those little nuggets of light, of inspiration. See what touches you on your heart, because we're all different at different moments of our lives, and we will be touched by different things. So I hope that when you listen to this, there will be something somewhere that will touch you.
St. Francis is with us. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.